Hey everyone, Nick here from Talking Cardboard, and in this video I'm going to be talking about the board game Mr. President. Or is it a board game? So first of all, I want to start off by explaining what this video is not. It's not an overview of Mr. President. There's plenty of good videos that give you a good understanding of how this game works and how the rules work. It's a very complex game, and I'm not going to take the time to do that in this video. I'm also not giving a very detailed review. This is me kind of opining about the game, giving my thoughts and feelings because I felt this game deserved that from me. And I also say that because I actually didn't finish a full session of the game. I'll explain that soon enough. But nonetheless, I just want to manage expectations. If you were looking for one of those things, a full overview or an actual review, definitely check out those other videos, and I apologize. Otherwise, maybe you'll still find this interesting to hear one man's thoughts about Mr. President, the board game. Or is it? More on that soon, too. So first of all, if you're totally unaware, Mr. President is a solitaire board game where you are, as the player, are the President of the United States, and you're managing essentially everything the real President of the United States would be managing in the White House. So how did I come about this game? Well, first of all, one of the original games that got me into the hobby was called B-17 Queen of the Skies, which is a World War II themed board game where you're managing a B-17 bomber. And essentially in that game, you're just rolling dice and cross-referencing all these different charts to see how things resolve. So you're rolling dice just to see how you take off. You're rolling dice for the weather. You're rolling the dice for where your mission is going to take you. You're rolling dice for how many fighters are appearing in every single zone as you fly to your target. You're rolling dice to see where you get hit, where you hit enemy fighters. You roll dice on a track to see how effective your bombing run is. Mr. President kind of falls in that same family of game where it's essentially you're rolling dice and checking a chart. There's definitely more actions that you're taking in Mr. President than in that B-17 game, but that was something. But that was the type of game that appealed to me early on in my life, and so Mr. President definitely fit that kind of bill. So when I found out about this game several months ago, it immediately piqued my interest, and without doing a lot of research, I decided I would buy it once I saw that it was on sale for a good price. Early on after getting the game, I thought, oh, this could be something I could do with my dad. My dad's not a hobby board gamer by any means, isn't much of a board gamer, period. So I knew that playing a solitaire game with him was something he'd be okay doing because obviously I'd be, handling all the rules and everything, and he would just kind of serve as my bright vice president. So I set up a date for that, and leading up to the day that I was going to play this game with my dad, I, of course, looked over all the rules, and that's when it's really started to sink in how complex this game is because you're getting I don't know how many, at least 10, maybe, I think more than 10 different booklets of charts, of rules, of guidelines, of all these different appendices. It's just a massive overload of information. Never seen a game like this before. And I tried my best to read through what I felt I needed to ahead of playing with my dad. Then comes setting up the game. Setting up also is a chore. I did go out and buy one of these custom organizers on Etsy, and I recommend that to anyone because you can't use baggies for this game. There's way too many types of chits, and using baggies would drive you nuts. You could maybe try to use the GMT or DVG chit organizers, but I think even those aren't good enough for all the variety of chits that come with this game. So anyway, I ended up getting the customized organizer for this game to help with setup and takedown. But nonetheless, when I was setting it up, it still took a long time. And there are scenarios in the game, different scenarios, and there's also a sandbox mode. The scenarios are kind of historical in nature. They're trying to they set the conditions of the world map and the domestic map too to align with that historical period in time. There's a 2020 scenario, which is essentially just 1 year long, and that was the one my dad and I thought we should do because we knew we probably wouldn't finish a full game for sure, let alone even the 2020 scenario. So that also is kind of mentioned to be more of the introductory scenario too, since it is just 1 year of time, which means basically a quarter of game time or gameplay time than a normal scenario would take. So my dad finally shows up to play Mr. President with me. We're all excited about taking out this game because I explained all the cool things this game does, because I had watched at least some playthrough videos of the game before getting it to the table myself. And we start playing it, and immediately it hits me that this game was actually more complex than I thought it would be. I thought it would be more like that B-17 Queen of the Skies game where I fluidly was just going from chart to chart in this nice sequential order. And in Mr. President, there's just so many different charts and so many different actions that take you to different charts. And it became apparent to me that this was not going to be as simple of a progression as I thought. And the game does have a very fluid round system. I mean, it is clear on how the sequence of the game works, but it takes longer than I would have thought. And the other thing that was a little challenging was just understanding how you win the game, because in this 2020 scenario, it's like you just got to get reelected. Okay, simple enough. But how do you get reelected? Well, then you have to go through the rule books to see how you get reelected. But to get reelected, you need to get this chart up, this track here and this track here. Then there's die rolls, but those die rolls also are going to have modifiers, and you have to figure out, well, how do you get those modifiers? And just figuring out how to win the game was also a little on the convoluted side. And then we actually start playing the game, and there's this overwhelming list of actions you can take on your turn. We tried our best, to pick and choose the actions that made sense given the state of the board. And the action menu that comes with the game does a good job of, at least at a high level, explaining, do this if you want to accomplish X, Y, or Z. And I do think I applaud the game for that. I think that helps for sure. But nonetheless, you have so many different choices to make. And you're just kind of using your basic logic. Well, this track's pretty low, so I probably should try to raise this track, just because it's low. But you really don't know if one track being low is worse than another track, unless you probably do a lot of research, which I'm sure a lot of players do, and understand, well, this is the track that you really don't want to go down, that sort of thing. Nonetheless, there is like a guidebook that tries to give you some advice and pointers on which actions to take early on in the game. So the game does try to help you out, but it is very overwhelming. And then, we started going through the game phase, section by section, and we finally get to the China acts part of the game of the year or the round. And that has its own booklet. China has its own booklet of actions it takes, and it's just this very detailed, okay, you do this, China gets 6 actions, follow this, progression to see what those 6 actions will be. And you're just reading paragraph after paragraph to see these if or statements to determine, okay, is China going to do this action or not? And if not, then you move on to this one. And we were maybe a quarter of the way through this 2020 scenario, which I already said was a quarter of a normal game, and we had spent about 4 hours playing it. And if you want, you can watch the live stream of my dad and I struggling through Mr. President. It's on our Talking Cardboard YouTube channel in the live section. And I think my daughter also might make an appearance too, if you want to watch just for that, because she's really cute. But I digress. At that point, I started thinking, man, I almost started feeling this was really more of a job than a game. I felt like I should be getting paid for this. Like I'm having to figure out what action to take when there's so many different choices to make, and I need to figure out what to prioritize. Like, man, that's a lot of decision. That's a lot of agency I'm being given. I should be getting paid for this, and understanding all the different implications of that action. Like to know, okay, if I do this, these are the consequences. And at the same time, as much as that was kind of frustrating, that's also what made me really appreciate this game, which is odd because I'm saying it's frustrating and that it makes me appreciate the game at the same time. But that's also why I almost feel like it's not even a game. It's more of like a real simulation. You genuinely feel like you are the president of the United States. And obviously, I assume that's what this game wanted to accomplish, being called Mr. President. And it's true. Like the reality is, in our world, the president can only be doing one thing at a time, and that's just like the board game. You have all these foreign crises on your board that you're trying to take care of, and then you got your domestic things too, and then you have like media relations and party relations, and you want to obviously take care of all these things, but you can only do one thing at a time. And again, that's obviously no different than the real president of the United States. I started thinking of this game then really more of that, of a simulation. And, I jokingly say it's almost like you feel like it's a job, but it does. It feels like it's a job. It feels like work. And I'm not saying that in a negative way, because that might immediately turn off people to hear, oh, I don't want to play a game that's like feels like a job. But I'm saying that kind of as a word of caution. I think there's nothing wrong with that, like playing something that simulates a real job. But and I think that's what makes this game really stand out, because I don't think I've played a game that really accomplishes that as well as Mr. President does. So with that said, the game length was kind of concerning. At 4 hours, we had only gotten through a quarter of a game that was only of a scenario that's a quarter of a typical game. So that means we really would have needed 16 hours to play through. No, it was 16. Yeah, so 16 times 4. So 64 hours to play through a full real session of Mr. President, assuming we make it to the end of 4 years. Now, I'd like to think as we played through the game, we get more and more effective and efficient going through all the different charts and everything. I don't know what we were doing wrong. Maybe we were just, very dense. I've played a lot of board games in my life, so I feel like I'm pretty good at understanding how games work. Again, I would love for more people to watch that live session and comment on why it was taking us so long. But yeah, I'm not expecting anyone to watch 4 hours of my dad and I grogging through Mr. President. I would just be curious if maybe there's certain things we were doing that we shouldn't have been doing, but I don't know how we would have made the game any faster. I want to now kind of get to my final thoughts and why I wanted to make this video. And first and foremost, it's because I do think this is a fantastic game. I'm not the first to say that, but I want to go on record saying that. It's an amazing design. It incorporates so much of what I think the president would have to be thinking of on a day-to-day basis. One thing I really appreciate about this game is the avoidance of really making it political. And I mean that by, okay, there's a game about the president. I'm going to assume that there's going to be some sort of political bias in the design of the game. And I didn't sense that. Other people might vehemently disagree and say, yeah, no, this game definitely has a bias towards this type of, political ideology or that. I personally thought it was as bipartisan as you could make a game, and that you genuinely felt like you could take actions in the game and succeed as someone on both sides of the political spectrum. And I thought that was fantastic. I really appreciate that the game was designed that way. The theme is there. I mean, this game could not be more thematic. There's so much little nuance into the game of all these different actions that you just like while you're there were so many times where I'm like, wow, that's going to be the outcome of this like event or this action. That's so thematic. That seems like that's exactly what would happen. Like you're making these people happy, but then you're making these other people upset, or this track's going up because of X, Y, or Z, or this track's going down because of that. And everything always made sense to me. And one of the things my dad and I really thought was funny is it was like at the end of a certain part of the phase of the game, like the cleanup. It was like the cleanup phase. I can't remember exactly what part of the game you would do this in. You did this, but it just says media relations go down 1. Just a flat go down 1. And the rules say, because over time the media gets bored of you and they just lose interest. And you can't do anything about it. It just goes down 1. And I was like, yeah, that seems very realistic. Like the media, just going to, over time, through attrition, start losing interest in you as the president. And little things like that. And the rules and the mechanics do a great job of explaining, I think, why certain things happen or why certain charts are moving up or down. So I appreciated that as well. One thing that I thought was interesting is one thing I feel could be interesting is using this as a party game. Now, I have seen online a group of people playing the game, because at the end of the day, yeah, it's a solitaire game because you're only like one president, but the president does have a cabinet of people helping make decisions, and I think it'd be a lot of fun to be in a big group of people and deciding, okay, what are we going to do next? What are we going to do next? And maybe kind of assigning people the different focus areas to kind of role play, I guess. But like a chief of staff person, defense secretary, secretary of state, and then the vice president. So you could have like 5 people, including the president, and kind of divvy up roles that way. One idea of playing the game that I think would be kind of fun. And then the age range is there. Like you could play this with, it's definitely more on the older spectrum because you want to have some basic understanding of the political, how the politics work. But I think this would be a fantastic classroom experience for a government classroom. Maybe you just have one copy of the game and the teacher kind of plays it with the whole classroom to simulate how global politics work or something like that. Anyway, I think there's educational value for sure in this game. I was learning a lot just by reading through the rules and understanding how how our politics connect. So I thought that was cool, and it reinforces a lot of things that I kind of knew, but then the game kind of reinforces that. And how a bill gets passed, for example, the game does a great job of illustrating how you have to have people on both sides to kind of get a bill to pass and that sort of thing. At the end of the day, this is by far the quintessential presidential board game that you'll find. I don't imagine this is ever getting replaced. There is too much effort and design and put into the design of this game. I don't think it's ever going to get dethroned as the president board game, if you will. And not that there's hundreds of that type of game, but seriously, this is a game that does a fantastic job of accomplishing what I feel it set out to accomplish, which is simulating being the president of the United States. And again, we can still call it a board game. I know the title of this video is kind of clickbaity, but I genuinely did kind of feel like it was more of a simulation or even a job when playing through it. And I'm also saying that I'm okay with that. At the end of the day, this is a game that definitely is going to have a niche audience. There's not a lot of people I feel on the planet that are going to want to deal with all of the rigmarole this game has in all the different charts that you have to read through and everything that comes with this game. It's very intense. And I will also say this is one of the few times where I might be an advocate of the digital version of the game, whether it's on Vassal or Tabletop Simulator, just because of all the setup time and space you need for the physical game. I generally only ever want to play a physical game, and I don't think I actually personally would ever try to play in Vassal or Tabletop Simulator since I have the physical copy of the game. However, I was watching a YouTube video of someone playing through it on Vassal, and it looked very nice. They were going through the game at a nice speed. I think part of the reason being because they were able to quickly pull up all the different charts digitally too, which I think saves a lot of time. I just, since this is such a dice-heavy game, I just want to physically roll those dice, right? Like that's a huge part of the game. So just clicking a button and getting die rolls on a digital platform just doesn't have that same excitement as, of course, rolling them physically. But something to think about if you really want to get into this game. So with that said, as I mentioned at the top of this video, I know this was not meant to be a full review, or this was not meant to be a tutorial or instructional. If you want to learn more about how the game actually plays, there's plenty of videos out there for that. But I just want to give my honest opinion of the game, having played it now for a quarter of the 2020 scenario. I would like to get it back to the table in the future. I feel like I need to take some time to decompress after my first experience and understand how I could do a better job of playing the game more efficiently next time, because at the pace my dad and I were playing, it was going to take way too long to really enjoy. And that was the one problem that I had with the game, is this is not becoming enjoyable anymore. And I think that was my own fault. And it wasn't because of the design really of the game. Because like I said, I really did enjoy the game for what it was. I think it's a fantastic, it's a masterpiece as far as a board game goes. Like there's, it definitely is not going to appeal to everyone, but objectively, this is a very well designed game. And yeah, there is a lot of errata, and they're coming out with a second edition rule book that apparently or an update kit to fix a lot of things. I didn't notice any major issues when I played it for the time that I did, but that only can make sense. There's so many different things that easily I could imagine require edits, and that would have gotten missed just due to the amount of content in the game. And I do think there's opportunities for expansions for this game. I would think it'd be very interesting to have a Mr. President, but maybe it's Mr. Prime Minister, or basically, you're a leader of a different geographical area of the country. Also, increasing the time frame, having scenarios going back to the 60s, 70s, 80s, because this game only gives 4 or 5 scenarios from 2001 up to 2020. But with all that said, thank you so much for watching this far and watching me just kind of think out loud about my feelings for this game. Hopefully you still found this somewhat interesting, and hopefully I encourage you maybe to actually go out and buy this game. I think GMT is in the process of doing a P500 for the second print run of the game, so check that out. And like I said, that second print run will fix some errata issues that apparently existed in this first print run of the game. But yeah, it was Mr. President. I mean, there's so much to say about this game. I think I've done my best to state my thoughts in as a cohesive manner as possible. But really hope you enjoyed watching this video. Definitely like and subscribe to our other Talking Cardboard videos on our YouTube channel. And yeah, thanks so much for watching, and I hope to see you guys again soon.